6:30, call to order this meeting of the Fitchburg Board of Public Works for December 18th, 2023, held in council chambers, Francis Huntley Cooper Room. I'll note, this is the last meeting for 2023. Attending tonight, we have a full quorum. I'm via Zoom. We have Kim, Don, Dave, and Bill are all in attendance. So with that, at this point, I'll entertain a motion to, at this point, I would like to, we have public appearances for non-agenda items, and Mr. David Haith would like to speak at this time.
So what I want to talk about is I want to talk about the issues of the stormwater utility and the Hartung Field subdivision. So this is somewhat different than anything that the city has dealt with before, and it has really significant ramifications for potentially financial and also the ability of the city to continue to develop within the Wabasha Wetlands watershed. I don't know how many of you know, or if any of you know, of the fact that there was a very big lawsuit in 2015 brought by the town of Dunn, which chopped the Northeast Neighborhood Addition from 1,000 acres to, the initial decision was 330 acres, to develop, to protect the Wabasha Wetlands, which is a state natural area, which is what Swan Creek and Murphy's Creek feed into. So I just want to talk a little bit about the legal structure and the issue that has arisen because of the fact that what we have here is you have wetlands on the property, Swan Creek wetlands, which feed into the Wabasha wetlands, and D'Onofrio, the agent for Hartung, has designed the stormwater management facilities. But those stormwater management facilities will be deeded to the city. So the city will, as soon as that happens, will own and operate them. And therefore, the city is responsible for making sure that they meet all the conditions of the city's MS4 stormwater permit. And in addition, Hartung Fields is part of McGaw Park neighborhood, which was added to the urban services boundary, eligible to be sewered in 2010. And based on the studies that the city did, the DNR, who approves all those amendments that add developable land, put in extra rigid requirements for groundwater recharge, limitation of stormwater runoff to no more than pre-development. Usually it's pre-development rates, but the volume in this case, in all development within the McGaw Park neighborhood, cannot exceed pre-development volumes, which is really stringent. And back in the early 2010s, the city got a grant and produced a document that talks about how these things may be complied with. Well, so the issue is that, so when D'Onofrio goes to the DNR, when they apply for the DNR stormwater permit, that permit is a general permit, it's a self-certification permit. The DNR doesn't check to see whether or not it complies, it just accepts the fact that it does. And to some degree, it can do that legally because the city is responsible for making sure under the MS4 permit that it meets all the requirements of the MS4 permit. Okay, but the fact is that those additional requirements, wetlands, groundwater recharge, and volume of runoff, weren't known to the D'Onofrio at the time the subdivision was designed. So when it became known about, 6 to 8 months ago, it was sort of retrofitted on without changing anything. And the fact is that the stormwater management plan as submitted to the DNR, I don't know what has been submitted to the city. That's a secret process. Nobody gets to see that. There's no notification, public notification that a permit has been applied for, no public notification that a permit has been approved. But the point is that the filing itself says that it doesn't meet the requirements. So that was why I came a couple of meetings ago and said, you need to, as a body, given that you're the Stormwater Utility Governing Board, the Stormwater Utility is a public service business. You're the CEO and the Board of Directors. The only thing that the council has reserved to itself is approval of the budgets that the Stormwater Utility itself authors. That means that you have fiduciary responsibility to ratepayers, taxpayers. You have duty of care with regard to both ratepayers and the city, and you have duty of loyalty issues, which all have to do with reasonable investigation. So you can't just take the word of, let's say, Tim, that they've determined that it complies, because you're the ones who are responsible for making sure that when it gets deeded to the city, that we don't end up with, $1 million, $2 million bill to fix it. And so we're entering a phase now in development where this is going to become more and more common. So what I have done to protect myself as a ratepayer and a taxpayer and protect my fellow citizens is file a contested case hearing against the permit that for Hartung Fields. And a contested case hearing is an informal judicial proceeding before an attorney appointed by the state. And the Board of Public Works, acting as the governing body of the stormwater utility, has a really strong interest in making sure that the facility that it's going to be deeded and then have to operate and be financially responsible for, if it doesn't comply with the MS4 permits, that it does meet that. And so what really should happen here is, since the stormwater utility is a separate department distinct from the Department of Public Works, and there are many opinions by the State Attorney General that municipal utility commissions, which you are, you have all the powers of it, you're not exactly the same as for water and sewer. The right thing for you to do is hire an attorney who's knowledgeable in these matters, that represents you, who are the representatives of the stormwater utility, to join the contested case hearing, to ensure that indeed the permit requirements are met. Now, I'll be sending out some documentation on that to you, the attorney, and other things. But that's really, kind of the regulatory nutshell here, is that you have the responsibility to ensure that what's added to the stormwater utility meets the requirements of the MS4 permit. That's what the MS4 permit says. And the only way to really do that is, one, ensure that when the conditions are checked for the local approval by Tim, that the requirements for the specific things for the McGaw Park neighborhood are met, as well as wetlands, and also to ensure that the permits that are issued by the DNR also are the same. And again, remember that it's a self-certification. When these permits were submitted to the DNR, they went and said, we certify, there's a permit up on the wall, covers the whole state for all construction activities of 1 acre or more. They went to the DNR and said, I certify on behalf of my client, the Hartung brothers, who I have nothing against, and I wish them the best in their development, but that they certify that in fact meets all the requirements of the permit. And the actual fact is it doesn't. So if you don't take some action to ensure that those requirements are met, we're going to end up with something that doesn't meet the MS4 permit requirements, and there's going to be some cost at some point here. The cost could either be cost to fix it, or there's only so much water pollution that can go into the Swan Creek, only so much water volume before it turns from a snaky wetland riparian corridor into a straight chute. And the other thing that's important is that under the Wetland Protection Act, all the groundwater recharge for all the springs, for the base flow for the streams, and base flow for the wetlands must be maintained. And right now, the Hartung Fields stormwater system doesn't do that. So once, for example, Greenfield neighborhood, you go to the Greenfield neighborhood, and advocates say, and the DNR says, well, you're down by so many acre feet of water per year over what we originally was the baseline when we approved the McGaw Park neighborhood. Sorry, we can't afford that anymore. So you're going to have to make that up somehow, or you're not going to be able to develop the Greenfield neighborhood. So these are larger topics that haven't been talked before, and I just wanted to introduce it to you and alert you that there's going to be some documentation coming forward on this. Thank you for giving me the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Then we're going to move back onto our, did someone have a question? Did someone have a question there? I didn't hear. No? Okay.
No questions.
Then we'll move back. Okay, thank you. We'll move back to our agenda item. Or no, I'm sorry, first the report of our department head, Mr. Tim Volker, PE.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm jumping the gun here. First, agenda item 3A, approval of minutes from our December 4th meeting. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second it.
Moved by Kim, second by Dave. Discussion.
I had one correction.
Okay.
In the minutes, Resolution R-23423 is indicated as being unanimously approved, and I had voted against it.
Okay. Understood. Anything else? No. Can they be revised to reflect that Alder Jetser voted against Resolution R-23423 in the minutes? And all right. If there's anything else, then all in favor of approval of the minutes as amended, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The minutes are approved. Next, report from the department head, Mr. Tim Volker, PE.
Thank you. At the December 4th, 2023 meeting, there was a question regarding the Ninja Warrior course status. The grading has been completed for that course. That was completed by the Public Works in-house staff. The contractor, which is Krupp, will be finishing the bark mulch. It's weather dependent. They were supposed to have finished or at least started it Friday. We went by there today. It doesn't appear they have done that. So next up, we performed a sand test at well 5 on November 19th, 2023. There were no measurable amount of sand being produced at any given pumping interval other than minimal sand at startup, which is to be expected. Really the improvements that we did this year proved to be successful in increasing the yield for that well in a sand-free environment, which we were trying to achieve. We did achieve. Also, on Friday, we submitted the 2024 Public Transit Assistant Program application. This is to receive federal funding to operate the Madison Metro within the city limits. The application applied for $1.1 million in federal and state funding. The expenses are a total of $1.9 million, and then there's an anticipated revenue about $450,000, so that the city would make up the difference between the federal funding and state funding and then the revenue coming in. An update regarding the Phase 1 Saline Road reconstruction project. Both the Saline and Lacey intersection and Saline and East Sherrill Parkway intersection is stop sign controlled. We're anticipating having the traffic signals become operational in January of 2024. What's been the holdup is the electric service to those traffic signals. We're waiting on MG&E to install the service, and then the signals can become operational. Next up, we completed our biannual road condition reporting to the Wisconsin Department of Transportation. Since we completed the reporting, the 5-year road work plan has been updated to basically be updated based on the ratings that we completed this year. And then also this past Monday, a week from today, we had a public involvement meeting at the town of Verona on Monday, December 11th, so a week ago. And that was attended by about 30 residents for the project, and we're at about 60% design complete for that project. And with that, does anyone have any questions?
Tim?
Yes.
Can you characterize any comments, did the public have any comments at that Town of Verona meeting on Fitchburg Road? Or are they just there to listen?
Yeah, really the meeting started out, we had kind of a big aerial laid out on some tables that the residents were able to come up, and we talked through their individual comments that they had. Kind of the big comments were regarding property acquisition, how's the project going to impact them. Really, it's the properties around the intersection of Lacey and Fitch-Rona where we're proposing a roundabout. So really, we're looking to obviously impact them the least, minimize that. And then also assessments had come up, so we're trying to work through that for the curb and gutter.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tim, just a quick question on signals. We don't have a lot
Yes,
of them, and
sure.
these are new ones we're putting in. Do we put collapsible or foldable stop signs?
I don't believe the city has.
Might be worth looking at,
into?
'cause
Okay.
someone hits the power and
Sure.
they don't always go in blink mode, and then everyone's like,
Absolutely.
do I stop? Do they stop? And the foldables are great for law enforcement. The fold
Okay.
out, and so it gets fixed.
Did anything significant change with our road condition ratings?
Yes, Ross is actually online. He could probably speak in more detail. Ross, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the roads had gotten better because of the resurfacing we completed this past year in 2023.
Yeah, if you take, the average rating of all of our roads, it went up slightly because of the road resurfacing we did this year.
Okay, so no unexpected turns in the wrong direction with any roads?
No. And I mean, this is kind of just, nothing really unexpected comes up in these ratings because obviously we're out in the city for the 2 years in between, but we just aren't officially putting a number to those roads. So we kind of know the problem areas already before we go out, but yeah.
Any other questions for Tim?
Ross, follow up.
Seeing none? Go ahead, Ross.
Or Tim, both of you. On following up on the road question, again, just running the road and the surface looks better because we've done resurfacing. Do we have a pent-up demand coming in the future because the life of the road's going to be all due at the same time, or are we spaced out enough reconstructs with resurfaces, with chip seals or whatever, that we don't have a tsunami of roadway projects coming down the road?
So that's part of what the 5-year roads plan is meant to address. There's a few different activities included in there between maintenance, which is like the chip seal and the crack seal, and then the actual reconstruction, which is a capital expense. So doing more on the maintenance side to actually make our roads last for longer before we have to do the really expensive reconstructs. And we have CIP funding that is designated in every year for reconstructs, so we kind of budget based on that funding that's available.
Ross, and Tim, so, you have a sense how many, miles of road we would have added in the city this year?
It's about 1.5 miles.
Okay, so it's not, we get paid, the state funds, off gas tax, and it's really, I don't want to say insignificant, but it's certainly less than 1% increase in our roads.
Yeah, we've got about 142 miles total.
Okay, all right, thank you. Anyone else have anything for Tim or Ross? All right, we'll move on to our agenda items. First one we have is 5 Alpha. Resolution R 22923, authorizing Dane County Services for stormwater permit review and erosion control inspection in 2024. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Alder Jetzer. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Don. Again, this is something we've been contracting with the county for a number of years to do this. Tim, I'll let you take over on this.
Sure. The city has a intergovernmental agreement with Dane County Land and Water Resources approved on March 23rd, 2017 via Resolution R-35-17. So the city utilizes these services for the compliance review of stormwater management and erosion control permits and inspection. The 2024 operating budget has allocated $35,000 for Dane County erosion control and stormwater management review and enforcement services. So we're looking for authorization for payment to Dane County Land and Water Resources as outlined on the attached pre-approval form.
Thank you, Tim. Mr. Haith, would you like to come up? You're registered to speak on this item.
Thank you again. So I don't have any issue with the contract, but there's an ancillary issue that's important here. So the contract says, so the way that it works, okay, so give me 2 minutes just to introduce what the law looks like. So in 2013, the EPA came to the DNR and said, we can't allow all these cities to have their different stormwater ordinances. The Clean Water Act is a uniform law across the nation. You have to stop it. And the way you can stop it is you pass a law that says that all cities must adopt this uniform ordinance for stormwater. And so the county, so there's very little leeway in what the city can do. It can do a few things about flooding and a few other things, but that's pretty much it. And the county has done that. It's incorporated that into its ordinance. But there's a couple of things that are missing from the city's ordinance. In particular, there's no provision for allowing the city to look at, for example, those specific requirements that were in the McGaw Park neighborhood. There's nothing in our ordinance that says state mandated other applicable water quality regulations must be accounted for. And what the county ordinance says is if you don't have the complete county ordinance in there, you don't get to be the local deciding authority. The county does it for you until you pass an ordinance that complies with the minimum requirements. And I see that the RCC has an agenda item for this year. One of their work items is to update the stormwater ordinance. Oh, this is given that there's essentially little to no leeway, this is something that could be done in like 30 days. It has the potential now to be a big problem legally because since the county has an obligation based in its ordinance to take away the city's ability to approve stormwater permits because we don't have those extra things in there that say if it's part of the in-county water quality plan, you have to include that. And I think that, we focus on it in about 30 days, something could be quickly put together and passed because there just isn't much leeway. Basically, you have to take the county ordinance, add a few things in, and go. So that's just my comment. And that would avoid a whole lot of legal issues that are bound to come up at some point here, given that this Hartung Fields is kind of in that space of the state mandated requirements for which our ordinances don't have any provision for. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Haith. Questions from the board on this item?
I got a couple, Tim, and I'm
Go
not
ahead.
familiar with this. Again, it's a contract. Is it not to make sure our stormwater and erosion control plans meet federal, state, county, and local ordinances?
It is to ensure compliance with the stormwater management and erosion control permits. The county is just ensuring that for the city by reviewing the permit applications and also doing the site inspection services on the city's behalf. So all the development within the city, if there's a developer site or if it's a city project that needs an erosion control and stormwater permit, the county's reviewing that and then also going to the site to do the site inspection for that on behalf of the city. We're paying, so the developer's paying, it's a pass-through if it's a development project, but if it's a city project, the city would be paying for that.
Let me rephrase that then. If Dane County has a more restrictive ordinance or criteria on stormwater than maybe the city does this contract make sure we're in compliance with the more stringent one?
Yes.
Okay. And then the second question in all this, I know you're fully staffed now and you got an environmental person. The intent is to keep on with this contract even though you got a new person coming on board, or will some of that phase out?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in 2023, we've paid Dane County $28,000, and out of that $28,000, the developer total is $25,000. So that $25,000 it's a pass through to the developer, and then city projects we've paid a little over $3,000 for. So really, it's freeing up our staff to do other things, and that we haven't heard from the development community that the rates are very reasonable from the county to do this. Other municipalities do it, like the city of Middleton, Stoughton, a couple villages also.
If at any point
Yeah, is there a value in a second set of eyes, versus?
So there, if I
different-
could have another
different
minute,
entity?
I can just add the one little difference.
Go ahead, Mr. Haith.
So Tim can only enforce what's in the ordinances. He can't, so the county checks against the county ordinances, but the city can't enforce what the county says if it's not in the city ordinances. That's the problem. And so so the city has no legal authority to enforce these additional things that it agreed to back in 2010 when the McGaw Park neighborhood was added. And so, and the other part is that so there's this notion of local approving authority. For the city to retain its ability to be the local approving authority, it has to have an ordinance that complies with the most stringent by the county. If not, the county takes over until the city has an equivalent ordinance. So what I'm saying is that very quickly, within 30 days, the city could update its ordinance to match the county's, eliminate this problem before it turns into a bigger issue that it likely would be with this Hartung issue. So just do it, put it at the top of the list. Given that there's very little degrees of freedom, just get it done, get it out of the way. And then everything's great.
Thank you, David.
So I have a question, Tim. So we are authorizing $35,000 based on, it could need that, but like in this past year in 2023, we only spent 3,000 of what we had authorized. Is that correct? Am I understanding that correctly? If you said we had whatever, 28,000 and 25 of it was passed through from the developer?
Correct. So the city's expense was only 3,000 this past year.
Okay, and so the extra money just stays in the fund, or?
In the fund balance, correct.
Tim, back, I'm not sure we got heard before. Is there some value in a second set of eyes, having the county do this versus internal? We're kind of big on the work I do, peer checks and concurrent verifications and things like that.
Yeah, and the city does, I believe, go out periodically with the county. Ben, our environmental engineer, they do some audit checks on site. So Ben is in attendance with that. I believe it's quarterly that he does those. So he'll attend with the county staff, and like this past quarter, I believe Fitchburg, they had several sites they went to and took a look at.
Thank you. Any other questions for Tim on this? See none, we'll call the vote. All in favor of resolution R 229-23 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a resolution 5 Bravo R 217-23 approving change order number 2 for 2022 South Signing Road reconstruction project. Do we have a motion to approve?
Hey, Dave?
Yes.
Were we gonna move 5D up in our agenda at all?
No.
No,
No,
okay.
I'm sorry, it's taking a little longer, but I thought we'd keep it
All right.
where it is. I'm sorry.
Then I will move
Thank you for asking.
I will move approval of resolution R 217-23.
Okay, we have a second?
Second.
Did I get? Okay, second, Don. Believe this is mostly due to the water main under the intersection of South Sain and East Sherrill was not as deep as our drawings indicated, and was rock underneath, so the cost to I don't know if they had to blast or jackhammer the rock out to get it low enough is the reason for this change order. Is that in a nutshell, Tim?
Correct. So the water main was shallower at the intersection of East Sherrill Parkway and South Sain Road than what was shown on the plan. So we needed to lower it to get sufficient coverage. As we were lowering it, ran into some bedrock that we had to blast through. And so we're looking to do this change order, $75,000. 60% of it would be paid for by the TID. The remaining $30,000 would be paid for by water.
Tim, I don't know if you would have had a chance to look at who the contractor was that put it in initially. My suspicion, they knew where it was supposed to be, but they didn't want to bother with the bedrock. I'm curious if we know who that might have been.
I do not. Tracy, I'm sure does.
Would you get us that information?
Sure.
Nothing, water over the dam, but in our change order that is it 75,000 that we're approving for this?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Any questions for Tim on this one? I believe that we have it in our contingency to cover this, or we're going to. We should not have to. It's in our contingency, is what I meant to say here. Any other questions?
Tim, maybe it's more for my education, but where does errors and omissions come into play here? I understand the original contractor did not install it, but there's a lot of oversight that occurs out in the field, as well as design of this new one. No one did a boring to know that we had high bedrock, or no one knew that It wasn't installed properly?
So
or-
the previous as-built drawings were incorrect. So yeah, in order to, we would be boring or doing bores on as-built all the time. Typically, as-built drawings typically are correct. There's not many projects I go off of that, you also do borings on for piping.
So there's no culpability on anyone else's part here that we should have properly labeled it on the as-built, or we should have picked it up in design, or
I mean, I would think whenever this was installed by the city at the time, the inspection at that time, the engineer and the city inspector at that time should have caught it. It's hard for us, I mean, this is several years down the road. It's no fault of the current staff or the design team or the contractor. More so just the previous project and, double checking and making sure that the as-bills are indeed what got installed.
I am abstaining from voting on this matter just because we're peripherally related. But I did check with our staff on this today, and to try to prevent this from happening on the next two phases of Syene, the city has instructed us to get the actual elevation of the water main by opening up the manholes and measuring down for where down the water valves. So we're not relying on as-built for the next phases. We're actually going to do field survey by pulling manhole covers and measuring where the actual water line is, just in case there's rock anywhere else around for the next phases of this.
Caution. Thank you, Kim and Tim, for implementing that on the project moving forward. Any other questions on this?
How old is this water main?
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, how old is the water main? I mean, this is like brand new in terms of water mains, right? Because this only goes back to the development of Swan Creek neighborhood?
Yeah. I guess, less than 15 years. Yeah.
I'm just checking the GIS to see if there's a date. Looks like there's an install year in our GIS system. It says 2001, 2005, around that time frame. So about 20 years maybe, give or take.
I don't believe we have any recourse, but it would be interesting to know who the contractor was, if they're still doing work in the city and they apply in the future. We'd like to have a discussion with them. Any other questions on this? All right. Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All in favor of resolution R 217-23, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I'm abstaining.
Opposed? And
I'm abstaining.
Note that Kim is abstaining. Thank you, Kim. All right. So the resolution passes. Next, we have resolution R 239-23, accepting a public water main easement in Lot 2, certified survey map 13691 in the first addition to Fitchburg Technology Campus. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
Moved by Kim. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Dave. It appears that we need an additional easement on here from the water main to where the valve is for the customer. Is that correct, Tim?
Correct. So this takes place in the CSM for the Fitchburg Technology Campus, and water services were extended on Lot 2 to service Lot 1. City owns the portion of the water service between the public water main up to and including the water service valves. So a public water main easement is needed on Lot 2 in order for the city to operate and maintain the portion of water service installed on this lot.
Jim, was this occur because at the time of plating or whatever, we didn't have the exact location of where the entrance would be to where a building was? Why is this kind of after the later on in the process, or is this normal?
It kind of comes back to the as-built drawings. So the as-built drawings showed the water valves in between the side in the terrace between the roadway and the sidewalk. When they went and constructed I believe it's a daycare facility going on Lot 2. When we got the drawings in for that, it showed the existing valves behind the sidewalk where they were actually constructed. So we need an easement for that portion, which is, I believe, about 30 feet by 22 feet.
Thank you. Any other questions for Tim on this agenda item?
Are we paying for the right of way or just the materials and the install?
No, city isn't, no cost to the city for improvements or the easement.
Any other questions? All right, we'll call the vote. All in favor of resolution R 239-23 signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carried. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have resolution 5 Delta, R 197-23, approving the amended traffic management process. This was postponed from November 28th to provide more opportunity for public feedback. Do we have a motion to approve?
I move approval of resolution R 197-23.
Moved by Alder Jetzer. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Don. All right. We have Jay Hockmuth and Sue Easterday, who I believe would both like to speak on this initially here. So maybe we'll take we'll listen to them or take their comments here first.
Okay.
Sue, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Okay.
All right, game on.
Yes, we appreciate staff, Board of Public Works, and Transportation and Transit Commission taking an initiative to propose and review amendments to the TMP so speeding can be reduced on more streets. And we agree the current process is too restrictive. And we agree with 8 of the 12 amendments in the November 16th staff memo as modified by the December 12th staff memo. So please consider recommending to the council that the following amendments be approved, requiring approval of traffic calming plan by the city engineer only in commercial and high density residential areas, require approval of a traffic calming plan by residents except in commercial and high density residential areas, and that's in the November 16th memo. Require approval of a traffic calming plan by TTC only in commercial and high density residential areas. Allow traffic calming committee to ask the council to approve a traffic calming plan that's not been approved by the TTC, but has been approved by the BPW. And finally, add a sentence after the sentence in the 1212 staff memo that reads, examples of past projects and possible projects can be found on the City of Fitchburg website on the traffic management process page. The additional sentence we're asking for would say that possible projects would include but are not limited to speed humps, speed tables, traffic circles, chicanes, chokers, medians, islands, pavement markings, sidewalks, and stop signs. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Jay, if you'd like to speak, you're up.
Yes, good evening, and thank you again for the opportunity to speak tonight and all the work that staff and various bodies have done on this matter. We know we've been here a couple of times to talk about this, and I think this will be the second last time when save the council meeting on January 9th. I'd like to continue Sue's remarks. I think were on the first page of our 3-page comments. The other comments that I'd like to offer, the resolution itself, R19723, there are 3 provisions in there we think should be revised. They're fairly self-explanatory in the commentary. I would like to point out that the one that probably is the most significant and may be troublesome for some is the suggestion that a provision be added to the resolution that project to install bike lanes on Osmondson Road that's in the capital improvement plan, but right now will be replaced by a project that results from the community action request submitted in July. I think there's been a lot of dialogue about this project over the past couple of months, and there seems to be a consensus among some members of the council that this is a placeholder. The 50K is there to be used for the project results from the car. And we think when the resolution is adopted, it might be a nice gesture to include an explicit recognition of that. With respect to the amendments themselves, the 4 that Sue mentioned, I'd like to spend a minute giving a little more background on our thinking on why these should be considered. The one regarding the city engineer approval, right now under the existing process, if the neighborhood traffic calming committee is appointed and operates in good faith in consultation with the city engineer, the product can go to the Board of Public Works for review. And we think there's enough safeguards in the process that if the traffic calming committee was considering something that the city engineer didn't think was appropriate or cost effective, if the traffic calming committee is advised of that, they're not going to spend time on that. They're going to move on to other items. So, and secondly, this board has the sufficient expertise. If something came to them that wasn't good, so to speak, it ain't going to go anywhere. So we really hope that you'll reconsider the staff recommendation and limit this ability of the city engineer to veto a project coming out of a traffic calming committee to only the high density residential and commercial areas. In regard to the second point, the second of the 4 amendments we hope are recommended, that we really appreciate the gesture to reinstate the provision in the car form that 50% of the residents on the affected street have to sign the car before it will result in, a process to look at traffic calming. The problem still is that there's no provision that whatever emerges from that traffic calming committee be reviewed by the residents again before it goes to the Board of Public Works. And so except for high density residential and commercial areas, we hope that you'll consider reinstating the provision that the results of the TTC or the Traffic Calming Committee have to come back to residents. The third of 4 suggested amendments on our part is with respect to introducing the Transportation and Transit Committee review authority for traffic calming plans.
Jay, just so you know, we're not able to hear you right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? I'm
Yes.
not on mute.
I can hear him.
Okay. Okay.
Problem is on our side.
Okay, sorry. With respect to the point I was talking about, the Transportation and Transit Commission review of traffic calming plans, we think that it would be fine for that to be in high-density residential and commercial areas. But with respect to low-density and medium residential, we think that it would be better to just leave this with the Board of Public Works. The Transportation and Transit Commission has expertise, but I think it's a little different, and it probably is much better applied to a lot of the things that TTC is involved in these days, rather than starting to get involved in these more straightforward public works projects. And then the last of the 4 amendments we're suggesting is that we appreciate what staff is doing. We have no problem with dropping Appendix C and D from the plan. We like the idea of having the various Phase 2 measures delineated on the website. But we've offered some language we think that would be best to use to make sure there's continuity and understanding and not misinterpretation of what Phase 2 measures are. And we also do encourage this board to seriously consider adding stop signs to the list of Phase 2 measures. They are a Phase 2 measure. They're used extensively all over the county, the state, And we think they should be listed here because they are the most cost-effective in most instances Phase 2 measure, and they could be used in more areas in Fitchburg to slow traffic down. I'm almost done, and I appreciate the extra couple minutes. With respect to the point about revising the resolution, I think we've gone through that. The plan, the SIP was amended in July to add a project that residents were not notified of. There's widespread concern about this, and we support the concept that this is $50K for placeholding for whatever results from the car for Osmondson. So in closing, I'd just like to ask that you consider asking staff to take the December 12th memo and the November 16th memo and prepare one memo for the purposes of the January 9th council meeting that has the most current version of what staff is proposing, including the redlined version that's attached, I think, to it's both the November and December memos, I believe. I'm not sure, I take that back. I'm not sure the December memo has a red line, but the November memo does have a red line, and that really does show all the changes, the additions, deletions from the current process. I know that's time consuming, but it would be greatly appreciated as something that would capture the essence of all the various iterations to this and include the TTC, the BPW, and staff recommendations in one document. And again, thank you for taking the time the past 2 months to listen to our suggestions regarding this very worthwhile endeavor. Again, we support these changes conceptually and look forward to seeing some further speed reduction in Fitchburg.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Sue. All right, I'll open it up to the board. Their thoughts, which direction we'd like to go. I hate to put more on our staff, but I wouldn't mind seeing everything consolidated in one. But I'm open to suggestions and thoughts on this. So to hear what you think.
Does Ross have any comments on the 4 amendments that they are asking for that were not incorporated into this at this point in time, or not really?
So the first thing I kind of want to point out is that the way that this resolution functions right now, the November memo functions as the actual changes that are being voted on as part of the resolution by the various boards and councils that are taking action. And then the December 12th memo summarizes amendments to that resolution that would need to be voted on by Board of Public Works and then Common Council. So combining them into a single memo would, I think, be more confusing while we're going through the process here. But I understand having two memos on the same thing is not the most.
So are you saying we have to vote on the original one from November 1st, and then we have to vote on the amendments? So we have basically two different ones that we're voting on rather than combining them? Okay.
Correct. Because that's what was referred out the first time at Common Council was the changes that are listed in the November 16th memo. And then the December memo was added later.
So there, Ross, there were 12 amendments proposed.
There's more than 12, but they're 12 major ones.
Okay. And so, just so I'm summarizing this, I'm sorry, but, so if we listen to citizen community, Jay and Sue, they agree with 8 of them, and it's these first 4 that they want changed, is what I'm gathering. There's 12, and they want changes of these 4 that they specified here. Am I getting this correctly? You know, the city engineer approval can go to Public Works for review. Was discussing the community action request form, 50%. Third one, TTC, you know, only approval for high density and commercial. And the fourth one was to add the stop sign to the traffic control measures. I'm writing furiously. I'm not sure I'm capturing these all.
I think that's a good summary.
Okay. All right. So board members, you have a preference on how we move ahead here? No, I'm not hearing any. Well, I'd like to suggest then, go ahead, Bill.
I guess, I don't mean to throw any shade on Jay or Sue, but I mean, we hire professional engineers for this very purpose. And if we're trying to say that the engineer should not have say over the engineering of a project, that seems counterintuitive to me.
I hear what you're saying. I think where they're coming from, that the community has the right to come back to council and say, we don't agree with what the city's assertion is. I think that's part of that's part of the democratic process. But I understand what you're saying, Bill. Anything else on that?
Are you talking about the process, or are you talking about
I'm talking
specifics?
about these four amendments, or anything else in the control plan. So
first we're going to vote on the November 16th memo with the plan that as it was referred out, correct?
that is correct.
Okay, so I have one question on that. Under the phase 2 treatment criteria, where you now have this table of the posted speed limit and the 85th percentile speed, I do not understand why they're all 10 miles an hour except the 25 mile an hour to the 30 mile an hour. Can you explain why you've changed that one compared to the rest? It doesn't seem to make sense to me.
Sure. So for the 15 and 20 mile per hour streets, the only places where we currently have 15 and 20 mile an hour speed limits are in school zones. using this process in a school zone, I think it's important to be able to use this process in a school zone if we feel it's necessary, but it would be difficult because those school zone speeds are only active for parts of the day. So using a 5 mile an hour increase for the 85th percentile speed on those streets, I felt would be difficult, and enforcement would likely be our first option for school zones in the first place. For the 30 and 35 mile an hour streets, those are generally larger streets and not purely residential. So phase 2 treatments shouldn't be used there as judiciously, since we've got different kinds of traffic, likely higher volume of traffic. But then for the 25 mile an hour streets, that's the speed limit that I shouldn't say a percentage, but a very high percentage of our residential streets are 25 mile an hour speed limits. So a 5 mile an hour difference there on a generally low traffic street can make a big difference, especially with all of the purely residential streets we have that don't have sidewalks and therefore pose more severe safety issues.
Okay,
So that's kind of,
I get it now. I didn't
there,
put that
yeah.
together with the school zone part and then the higher density part. It just seemed like
Mm-hmm.
consistency, but I understand your rationale and think it seems reasonable.
Yeah, I believe we have four schools, within our, well, 5 schools, but really probably 4 zones, traffic, reduced speed zones in our city. If I'm counting right. All right, any other questions or comments?
Does Ross, or maybe it's general in the process, if as you're implementing these and you're starting to find more data and some of your mitigation strategies, some work better than others, are you able to tweak it on the fly, or do we have to redo this whole thing if you want to weight it differently? Because in particular, I know I talked with Ross before, this isn't weighted very heavily for where we have mix of people, bikes, kids on the road because there's no sidewalk. It's not weighted in there where maybe our crash data will show that, maybe it won't, but that's where we're going to have the most vulnerable users on that. But it's not weighted as heavily on here where if you have a lot of that mix of vulnerable users on the roadway, we should count it and we should weight it in here. But I understand we won't have the data because we don't have counters to do that yet. But as you get that stuff, can you tweak this as we go, or do we have to redo the whole resolution every time you find something cool that's really working?
I think the way that the score sheet functions with these updates, it gives 10 points in most cases out of the 30 that you need to move on in the process for those vulnerable road user type categories. So if there is an issue with speed or volume or crashes plus 1 or 2 of those vulnerable road user categories, then you're almost guaranteed to hit that 30-point minimum that you need. So I feel like that part of it will function as intended. And then as far as the piece about the when we find a solution that works really well, that is part of the reason for removing Appendix C and D and putting the contents of those appendices on the website so that we can more easily update those with, past results, things that have worked, remove things that we feel aren't working. And we're also not limited to those solutions that are shown on the website. We can always implement a different new solution if something comes up.
And then maybe one follow-up in their document with your edits. It's, you got kind of a ranking. It says most expensive and permanent. In the 3 E's where you're applying it, and you mentioned in one case, if you got problems with school zones, you may not apply a mitigation strategy that's in your category 1 or 2. Sounds like an enforcement's the best cost-effective solution in that case. Is how you're tying in the education part of it. I mean, I see a lot of people walking on the wrong side of the road, not facing the traffic, and just getting out a PSA on proper way to walk when there's no sidewalks might be effective too. Is that all tied in this solution game plan?
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely something that we could implement as a phase 1 treatment. That would be honestly one of the easiest things we could do is send out letters and put up posters, educating pedestrians on that. But then as far as the school zone point, if the 85th percentile speeds did get high enough, the 10 miles an hour over the school zone limit, then we would likely implement a phase 2 treatment, because then it's past the point where we've probably tried enforcement and we're not getting the results that we want. So we need to actually spend a little bit more money to keep people safe and move into phase 2.
And then final question on this whole thing, kind of reading it and some of the input on, taking out final approval from the city engineer. Process-wise, is not the final approval really the council? Not this group, but the elected officials? If they say do it, you're going to do it? Or is this trump that? Is that what, I'm not following the process here.
So the way that these would run is once we got into phase 2, we form a traffic calming committee, which is made up of neighbors in the neighborhood. That body, along with staff, decides on treatment. Then it goes to Tim or city engineer for approval. If the city engineer approves, then it moves on to Board of Public Works and TTC for their approval of the calming plan. Then we start doing the actual engineering, where we develop a plan set, bid out the project, and then that project would go to council for approval, because that's when the financial element comes in.
So we have several, I'm just looking at this for about the 5th time. So we have the red line is revised on the 14th of December. That's the red line copy we have here that I've read through.
Yep, and that date will probably have to change, since that was the original date that was supposed to be approved by council.
I'm with you. I'm with you, Ross.
Chairperson Herbst, can I ask a question?
Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
There's reference to a red line version from December 12th. Is that posted on the website, Ross?
So the red line version that Alder Herbst was referring to it's attached to the November 16th memo. The date in the TMP that was redlined was dated as revised on December 14th, 2023, because that was the original date that Common Council would have been voting on those revisions. So that date will change to January 9th or whatever the date is that Common Council approves.
So then we have a clean copy of it later on, Ross. Says revised December 14th. Is that just a cleaned up copy of the markup one?
Yes, so the packet goes for the redlined version, which has all the changes.
Yeah.
Then basically what the traffic management process would be after it's voted on, the just new version without it has the changes, but they're not redlined.
Okay. All right.
And then there's also the old version, just for reference.
Okay.
Well, but my question is there a red line version that shows the changes recommended on, that are the 12 major amendments are in a red line version attached to the November 16th memo? Is that correct?
Yep, and that's in the agenda packet for this meeting.
Yeah, but is there a red line version, the December 12th memo actually changes some of the initial recommendations documented in the November 16th memo? So is there a red line version that shows the first set of changes plus the second?
No.
Okay, thank you.
So, any other questions, comments here?
Yes, Ross, on your striked out version, page 11 of 40, projects ranking in there. In there, you got it underlined. It seems to be ranked based on which is the most expensive, which is the least expensive, versus maybe which is the most cost-effective one. Sometimes it's going to cost you a little more to be more effective versus picking a least one. The one that comes to mind is you put a stop sign at every one of these intersections. It may be really cheap, but it's not going to be effective.
So that next ranked less expensive phrasing would only come into play if the highest scoring project, if we did not have funds available to complete that project.
Okay.
So then we would go down to whatever the highest ranked project that we did have the funds to actually construct.
Okay.
So,
And go ahead, Dave. Sorry.
Ross and Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's been, in my experience on this board for 30 years that when we talk about stop signs, we design the current warrants. And that, many times people, we want a stop sign here or there. And, the example is Winger Drive, along the zoo in Madison, where they put one every half block to try to force traffic off the street. We have fought. We try to follow the warrants of good design, and so if we haven't implemented that option the way Madison has, nor do I want us to, but I like your thoughts on that. I don't mean to reinvent the wheel here, but
I think that's a great point. The MUTCD has warrants for the construction of stop signs for, a two-way stop at a four-way intersection and for a four-way stop. And we follow those with our designs. the other point on stop signs is that while they might be effective at diverting drivers because they can be frustrating if there's too many of them, they're not generally effective for reducing 85th percentile speeds. You generally see people, stopping at the stop sign and then accelerating more quickly and to a higher top speed in between stop signs to subconsciously make up for the lost time from having to stop.
I agree.
So they can be effective if you have, pedestrian safety issues or visibility issues at an intersection, but they're not a good solution for reducing speeds.
Thank you.
Ross, tell me about how any of these projects are funded. Is this always going to be a CIP amendment or? Yeah, go ahead.
So the city has a traffic calming fund that's in the CIP, and that fund can be used for any project that comes out of the TMP or NTMP process. We don't need a budget amendment or a CIP amendment for a specific project. We can just use that money because it's a project that came out of the traffic management process. And that is funded, I believe there's $150,000 in that fund right now.
We also, Bill, I had several amendments with the ARPA funding to use it for traffic calming over in the District 1 was another source of funding for these, but probably that's kind of a one-time thing. All right, any other thoughts here? Any other comments? So what I would like to do is get a vote on the this is dated, the clean copy as dated December 14th in your packet.
It's the one that was attached to the November 16th memo. Yes.
I'm paging through here, Sue, and I get to the clean copy here. Revised December 14th, 2023.
But that's because they expected it to go to council on December 14th, so they put that date in there. It was the one that, and since we didn't address it on November 16th, that date is no longer relative. It's going to have to change to January 9th. But it
is this clean copy that I believe we would be voting on.
Unless we amend it to include the December 12th memo.
So, yeah, so here's what I would like to have. Yeah. So I'd like to have the vote on this, and then we'll come back and we'll vote on whether these amendments, one at a time to see if we approve or approve them being added, be included in the memo. Does that seem reasonable to the committee?
Yes, vote on the original one and then vote on the 4 that are in question. That seems reasonable.
That is what I would like to do if everyone thinks that's a prudent course. Okay.
So when you say the 4, you're talking about the ones from the December 12th memo?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And just before we start, just so I have these written down, Jay, are you still on? Or Sue, please read these back to me. So I didn't write fast enough the first time. So the first amendment you wanted was?
Well, there's 2 4s. There's the 4 changes to the red line from November 16th that staff has recommended. There's those 4. And then there's the 4 modifications that Sue and myself have offered in our written testimony.
So those are the 4, I don't, those are the 4 I'd like, us to consider as amendments to, the original, to the main body of it here, Jay. So could you read?
I can, but we appreciate that, but there are 4 others in the staff memo dated 12/12/23 that we hope are incorporated into what this board recommends to the council. Those, the 4 in the 12/12/23 memo, I believe Ross can verify this, those 4 are not in the red line version attached to the November 16th memo.
That's correct.
So we don't have a copy here that has the staff additions here from 12/12. We don't have a copy with that in them.
It's,
So-
yeah,
No,
so,
that's why there needs to be an amendment of some sort if you want to incorporate those 4
I-
from the staff memo dated 12/12.
Yeah, I believe I do.
And we hope.
Right, well, let's list those, okay? So everyone's on the same page. So the 4 from the 12/12 memo read as, or what page do I find those on?
page 34.
Those are on,
Page 34 of the red line?
No,
or-
page 34 of the 72-page packet.
Page 34 of the 72. Hang on. Okay. Bear with me. I normally have a bigger computer screen in front of me, so.
While Dave is looking that up, Ross, is that December 12th memo, that's something that you are comfortable with and you want to be added to this TMP change?
yes, those 4 amendments, staff is comfortable with, and we arrived at those after meetings with Jay and Sue.
All right, so I'll read these. Okay. Well, these would be, the first one, change the community action request form to require signatures from 50% of households or single-family homes and duplexes, and 30% property owners or businesses in all other areas. The second bullet, add the following language. Examples of past projects and possible projects can be found on the city Fitchburg website. Third bullet, add the following language. No part of this document modifies R 185-16 titled a resolution updating and extending resolution R 7510 regarding the construction of new sidewalks and shared use paths in existing neighborhoods. And the last one, add the following language. If one, but not both, of the Board of Public Works and TTC approve a traffic calming plan, the traffic calming plan should be submitted to council along with both bodies' recommendations for council consideration. So does anyone have any issue with these 4? I just gotta ask before. Seeing none, okay. All right, so those are the 4 from the 12/12 memo, and I'm not hearing anyone objecting to those changes. Now, Jay or Sue, can you outline the 4 amendments you were suggesting or changes?
Yes. They're at the bottom of page 1 of our handout for the evening meeting. The first one is require approval of a traffic calming plan by the city engineer only in commercial and high-density residential areas. and allow the traffic calming committee to ask the council to approve a plan that has not been approved by the city engineer.
Is that one or is that two amendments?
Well, that's just one amendment. There's two parts to it.
Okay, so it's part A is, require city engineer, approval only, for, commercial, areas. And
And high-density residential.
high density, okay,
And then if such a plan was denied by the council, allow the residents to ask the council to take a look, it should be the city, ask the council to approve it. Should actually read the Board of Public Works.
okay,
Sorry for that omission or a mistake on our part in 4A. It should ask the Board of Public Works to approve a plan that has not been approved by the city engineer. 2 is require a traffic approval by the residents, except in commercial and high-density residential areas. So the car form is now going to require 50% of the residents to sign the car form, but we're also asking that before it come to the Board of Public Works for approval, it come back to the residents. That's a feature of the current process, excuse me. And then require approval of a traffic calming plan only in high density residential and commercial areas by the TTC. And allow a plan, the Alaska Traffic Calming Committee to ask the council to approve a plan that's already one of the 4 that we just talked about a moment ago. So we're good on that. And then we'd like to add an additional sentence to the sentence that's one of the 4 in the 1212 memo that possible projects include but are not limited to. It just delineates what's known to be appropriate at this point in time. So
I gotcha, okay. Thank you, Jay, stay online.
thank
All right.
you.
So what I would like to do, board, is I would like to, have a vote first on the November memo. Then I'll ask for a vote on the, approval or denial of the city, the four bullet points on page 34. And then we will go through one at a time and vote on the proposed amendments from that Jay has outlined, citizen memo. Does that seem reasonable?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's do, so first, you gotta go back up to the agenda. So first we are going to, first one will be, we're gonna vote on resolution R19723, approving amended traffic management process. This was postponed from November 28th. So I'd like to call the vote on this. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that carries. Next, like the 4, if you go to page 34 of your packet, again, these 4, to amend the process to include the 4 bullet points on page 34, recommended by the city. I just, I would, I'm just debating whether we should do them one at a time or the block. I'm gonna call the vote, all in favor of amending the process to include following changes suggested by the city to the traffic management process, the 4 bullet points. Change community action form to 50% and 30%. Change language, add the following language showing the examples, add the following language regarding sidewalks and shared use path, and add language, if one but not both of Public Works and TTC approve a traffic calming plan, Plan shall be submitted to common council along with both for council deliberation. So I'm going to ask for a vote on this in a block. If you're opposed to any of them, you can vote nay. So all in favor of the 4 proposed changes by city staff to the process signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, those are passed. Next, go through, we're going to vote on these amendments one at a time. Okay. So the first one, do we have a motion to approve the amendment to require city engineer approval in commercial and high density, require city engineer only approval of traffic calming in commercial and high density residential. And the second part, the 1A, if to add, if the plan is denied by Board of Public Works, the citizens can be taken up at council. So this amendment, do we have a motion to approve this amendment?
I'll move to approve so we can vote on it.
Okay, all right. We have a second. Thank you, Kim. That was my. I'll second the motion so we can vote. All right, so we'll have, all right, I'll just call the vote. All in favor of amendment 1 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Say nay.
Nay.
The amendment fails, okay? Next, amendment 2, I don't know if, didn't we have this one already with the 50%?
I think what he wants
Jane.
is he wants it to come back to the traffic calming committee or come back to the residents.
Oh, yes,
Because
yes, okay.
it's, once it gets approved, then they don't tell them to come back. So they want it to come back to the residents that what has been approved.
So okay, so this amendment would require after approval of the traffic calming plan by Board of Public Works, it would be brought back for review by the.
And that's only for the
citizen,
low and medium density.
Oh, for the low and medium density, yes.
Could, Chairperson Herbst, could I make a clarification on this second one we're discussing now?
You can, Mr. Ackmuth.
The intent here is that the plan before it went to the Board of Public Works for review and or the city engineer for approval, it would come back to the residents.
You would want.
The current process has,
Okay,
a plan cannot go to under the current process, a plan cannot come to the Board of Public Works if it hasn't been approved by a majority of the residents voting on the plan developed by the TCC.
okay. All right, I understand. So the amendment would change that prior to approval of a traffic calming device by the Board of Public Works, the proposed plan would be sent back to the traffic calming committee citizen members for approval. Is
It
that
would be sent back to the residents.
residents?
The plan would be developed by the TCC, but it wouldn't go to the Public Works Board before it came to the residents.
So what if the residents
All of
don't
the
approve it?
residents of the neighborhood.
Well, under the current process, then it wouldn't go to the Board of Public Works.
And that's fine with me. They can't agree on it and want it. But
Can I ask a clarity?
go ahead, Don.
I took the process to mean the city's going to get input from the locals, residents, but the city's going to recommend the mitigation strategy. The residents may not agree with that strategy. Again, they may have desires for a different one, but the strategy getting implemented is what's recommended by the city. I think that's what's in the original one. This amendment is they want a veto power to say if they don't agree with what the city came up with and they want a different one, they want to come back. Or if this board agrees with what the city came up with, they want a veto authority on it. That's what I'm taking the amendment to mean.
So in the current NTMP, once the traffic calming committee made up of the neighborhood members comes up with a plan along with city staff, then a survey is sent out to the neighborhood and needs 50% of the neighborhood to vote in favor of it. That's how this system currently works. In the proposed changes, that survey that needs 50% approval has been removed for basically the reasons that you just stated, which is that once a traffic calming is identified as a need, then staff will work with the neighborhood to come up with a solution, but then ultimately that will be recommended by staff. But Mr. Hockmuth is proposing that that be added back in, that 50% approval of the neighborhood of a specific plan.
I wonder if we're putting an obstacle to get something done. That's yeah.
So Ross, the way it's been proposed, the city staff, city engineer will come up with a plan. It's got to be approved by Board of Public Works. It's got to be approved by TTC. And then it also has to be approved by council. Is that correct?
Only at the point where we have bid out a project and need to ask council to spend the money.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, it seems like there's a lot of opportunity for the public to come to any of those meetings and speak up and try and sway the board or the commission or the council.
Right. Good. Well, would someone want to move approval of the amendment to require approval of 50% or 30% of the recommended solution, before going to Board of Public Works? Is that essentially, Jay, did I capture that?
What Sue and myself are proposing is that after the traffic calming committee prepares a plan that the city engineer has approved, that it be sent back to the neighborhood for a survey. And if more than 50% of the people surveyed return the survey, then the plan would go to the Board of Public Works.
Jay, aren't we doubling, and we require 50% of them to, want something done to start with? I'm.
The great question, the way the CAR form is currently structured, there is no specificity with regard to so first of all, the CAR process is you get the neighbors you get a majority of the neighbors to sign a petition saying we want something done. The next step is to appoint a committee of neighbors to work with the city engineer to come up with a plan. Okay. Currently, the third step is that plan comes back to the neighborhood for a vote before it comes to the Board of Public Works.
Okay.
And that step has been removed in the plan that we just approved because we thought we had, now after they put it out and it comes, goes to the traffic calming committee who's made up of residents, approves it, then Ross has taken out, or the city has taken out the survey coming back with the 50% vote. Is that correct, Ross?
That is correct.
And they would like that part reinstated, that it goes back to the residents for that. So do we want to add that step back in or not, I guess is the question.
Ross,
All right, well, let's,
wait, can I
let's,
ask Ross a question now? I'm getting confused with the extra steps, but who determines residency to get to vote on it? Does it have to be someone on that street, or someone that uses that street, or someone 5 blocks away, or someone that lives in Madison, or what?
how
So
many
that,
people on that street? No,
I mean, it depends on, it would always be the people on that street, but if it's a neighborhood-wide plan, it might be more than just one street. So it's determined by city staff in the end.
well, let's vote on this. So the amendment would be to add back in that after the traffic calming plan has been developed by the city and the traffic calming committee, it would have to go back to the residents and require 50%, approval of them before it would come to the Board of Public Works. Do we have a motion to approve that amendment?
I'll move to approve it.
Okay, moved by Kim, I'll second it. Call the vote, all in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, nay?
Nay.
Nay.
Hey,
The motion fails. Jay, my thought on this, is that, the people on the traffic calming committee, they're probably appointed by the neighborhood, and they should be keeping their neighbors informed. So, that's why I maybe changed my mind on that one. Next, Amendment 3, this would, the approval of the TTC is only mandated for high density commercial and high density residential. We have a motion to approve that amendment.
I'll move to approve it.
We have a second. I'll second the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
hey,
Were there three nays or two?
3.
Three, okay, that motion fails. All right. Then the last one was, I believe you wanted language added in about, the current CIP project, Jay.
No, actually, the fourth TMP amendment is to add a sentence that says possible projects include but are not limited to speed humps, speed tables, traffic circles, so on and so forth, sidewalks, and stop signs.
Okay.
Just to add that sentence to follow a previous sentence that you've already approved adding.
Okay. All right, so this amendment would be to add a sentence outlining the speed control techniques that Jay outlined, including the stop sign. Okay.
The things listed there are a rendition of what's in Appendix D. There's a picture for each of these, and this is just the names of those things, the captions for those pictures.
Okay. All right, do we have a motion to approve this amendment?
I'll move to approve.
Moved by Kim. I'll second. Call the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Oh, nay. Alder Jetser voted nay. So now, I'll call a vote on the, traffic calming, page back up here. I'm sorry for taking so long on this. Our traffic, we'll call the vote on our, resolution R 197-23, amended traffic management process as amended. All signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The amended resolution carries. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. I'm sorry. I did not handle that very well. Please accept my apologies. Okay. Next, our Board of Public Works meeting, Monday, January 8th, and at 5:30, so it's moved up ahead. January 1st is, the first Monday is the new year, so we're out a month. This time I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so move we adjourn.
Moved by Wilborn, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Jetser, all in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, and Happy New Year. Thanks for your.
Same to you, Dave.
Thanks for your contributions to the Board of Public Works in 2023. Have a good New Year and Christmas holiday.